Hello there, this is L24 World News, streaming live from the capital Algiers, and coming up next in our news program. The President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, renews his country's firm position with international legitimacy regarding the Libyan, Saharan and Malian crises. President of the United Nations General Assembly hails Algeria's prominent role in the African region, highlighting its exceptional contribution for the settlement of international conflicts. In Italy, about 51 million Italians will cast their votes for lawmakers in both the lower house, the Chamber of Deputies, and the Senate, the upper house of Parliament. 17 bodies were recovered over the past few hours after a boat carrying migrants from Lebanon sank off Syria's coast, raising the overall toll to 94. Hello there and welcome. I'm your host Abdurrahim Kashor, and those were today's top stories. During the meeting of the government governors organized under the title Economic Recovery, Regional Balance and Social Justice, Algerian President Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune said on Saturday that the Western Sahara cause is a matter of principle for Algerian diplomacy, especially as it is a question of decolonization registered with United Nations.
الصحراء الغربية قضية تصفية استعمار مع اللي تخرج من الأمم المتحدة وتمشي لجنة اللاجئين في هذا الوقت راها في الأمم المتحدة في لجنة تصفية استعمار قضية مبدئية. القرار الأخير نتاع الاتحاد الأوروبي واش يقول لك إننا نرجعوا للأمم المتحدة وتقرير المصير وهذا.
In the same line of thought, President Abdelmajid Tebboune stressed that Algeria stands with international legitimacy in Libya in the absence of the acceptability of the election, noting that there is no solution to the crisis except by listening to the voice of the Libyan people.
احنا مع الشرعية ما دام ما فيه شرعية انتخابية شرعية نتاع الصندوق نكتفي في هذا الوقت بالشرعية الدولية اللي تعين من طرف مجلس الأمن أو من مندوب من طرف مجلس الأمن. احنا هذاك هو اللي نمشي معاه. قلناها ونزيد نكررها بصفة رسمية باسم الدولة الجزائرية ما فيش حل بالنسبة لليبيا سوى إرجاع الصوت للشعب الليبي.
And regarding Mali, Algerian President Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune also stressed that there is an acceptance on the need to return to the Algiers agreement.
في النهاية اليوم في إجماع على أساس نرجع لاتفاق الجزائر العاصمة لزاكور دالشي هما الحل. ما فيش حل آخر اللي يصون الوحدة الترابية نتاع مالي وما نتنازلش مع أي كان اللي يحاول يفصل الشمال على الجنوب في مالي. في إجماع حتى مع الاتحاد الأوروبي بدينا نسمعوا النغمة الحقيقية نتاع الاتحاد الأوروبي جماعة وفرادى على أساس متفقين باللي الحل هو اتفاق الجزائر العاصمة لزاكور دالشي.
In related matter to Algeria's role in Africa, President of the United Nations General Assembly, Chaba Kouroussi, expressed to Algerian Foreign Minister Mr. Amtala Mamra his appreciation for support provided by Algeria in the success of his presidency. Kouroussi praised Algeria's prominent role in spreading peace and stability in the neighboring regions, expressing his admiration for distinguished record of Algerian diplomacy in leading mediations to end the current conflicts in international scene. The Algerian Minister of Foreign Affairs and the National Community Abroad, Mr. Amtala Mamre, had talks with his Russian counterpart, Mr. Sergei Lavrov, during the participation in the works of the 77th session of the United Nations General Assembly. currently being held in New York, USA. The talks were an opportunity for both foreign ministers to discuss the various aspects of the strategic partnership between Algeria and Russia. The head of the Russian diplomacy renewed the invitation to the Algerian President Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune by his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin to visit Moscow. In the same context of the UN General Assembly, the Algerian Foreign Minister Mr. Ramtala Mamra met with the Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi. Both ministers discussed the development of the friendship and the partnership between the two countries, which reached the 60th anniversary. Mr. Lamamra and Mr. Wang also exchanged views on worrying situation the world is going through. To a different matter now, Italians had to pause on Sunday for a parliamentary election that could determine who next governed the major European industrial economy and key NATO member. Polling stations were prepared a day ahead for nearly 50 million Italians. Voters will receive 2 ballots, one pink for the lower chamber vote and one yellow for the Senate vote. Major political parties in Italy closed their final rallies on Friday. However, the rightist coalition led by Giorgia Meloni is seen as the fourth runner and expected to be the first female prime minister in Italy, according to opinion polls.
Mi piacerebbe, ripeto, un cambiamento.
I would like this government to change, but I would be happy if our Prime Minister, Mario Draghi, stayed. So they have to go, and he has to stay as president.
I'm a right-wing voter, and therefore happy to see Giorgia Meloni in the government. I had the chance to know her when she was younger. I know that she's a person of democratic culture who speaks 4 languages. She is very prepared.
Still in Europe, but in a different matter, police arrested hundreds of protesters in St. Petersburg on Saturday in full mobilization of its soldiers to fight in Ukraine, while Moscow has toughened the penalties for runaways after dismissing its head of military logistics, as Russian President Vladimir Putin has signed amendment providing for up to 10 years in prison for soldiers who desert or refuse to fight. The Russian Defense Ministry said on Saturday that Colonel General Mikhail Mystinishev, chief of Russia's National Defense Management Center, was appointed as a Deputy Defense Minister for Logistics. Army General Dmitry Bulgakov, who held this position before, has been relieved of it due to his transfer to another job. During the UN General Assembly speech, the Russian head of diplomacy, Sergei Lavrov, has criticized Western nations for what he called grotesque fear of Russia, telling that United Nations that such states were seeking to destroy his country. Nabil Khazini.
When Russia's turn arrived at the UN General Assembly, Sergei Lavrov, the Russian top diplomat, took the stage to hit back at pressure on Moscow led by Washington, which he says is trying to turn the entire world into its own backyard.
The official Russophobia in the West has reached an unprecedented grotesque scale. They do not hesitate to declare their intention to inflict military defeat on our country, but also to destroy and fracture Russia.
On the same day, referendums continued in 4 regions in Ukraine for people there to express their will to be annexed to Russia or not. Referendums condemned by Western leaders and dismissed as sham. However, Moscow calls them a sort of way of expressing the will of the residents in the 4 oblasts. But while fighting is still raging, the head of the Russian diplomacy said the regions would be under Russia's full protection if they are annexed by Moscow.
The entire territory of the Russian Federation, which is enshrined and could be further enshrined in the Constitution of the Russian Federation, and unquestionably is under the full protection of the state. This is absolutely natural, and all of the laws, doctrines, concepts and strategies of the Russian Federation apply to all of its territory.
The comments came after an explicit warning on Thursday by the Russian former President Dmitry Medvedev that any weapons in Moscow's arsenal, including strategic nuclear weapons, could be used to defend territories incorporated into Russia.
The urgent priority, according to China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi, is to facilitate peace talks. He claimed that China supports all ways that lead to a peaceful resolution of the crisis in Ukraine.
China supports all efforts conducive to peaceful resolution of the Ukraine crisis. The pressing priority is to facilitate talks for the peace. The fundamental solution is to address the legitimate security concerns of all parties and build a balanced, effective and sustainable security architecture. We call on all parties concerned to keep the crisis from spilling over and to protect the legitimate rights and interests of developing countries.
More than 10,000 civil servants marched through the streets of the capital Madrid on Saturday, demanding a fair wage increase in line with the rising cost of living. Public sector workers joined the protest called by one of the country's largest trade unions. This comes as the annual inflation rate in Spain climbed to 10.5% last month. The death toll from a migrant boat that sank off the Syrian coast after sailing from Lebanon earlier this week has risen to 94. Rescue teams have recovered more bodies from Syria's Banias coast on the Mediterranean in what is believed to be the deadliest accident of this kind in Lebanon. Seoul confirmed that North Korea fired a ballistic missile toward the sea of its east coast on Sunday, ahead of planned military drills by South Korean and U.S. forces involving an aircraft carrier and a visit to the region by U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris. After the launch, U.S. Forces Korea Commander Paul LaCamera and Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff Kim Song-kyum discussed the situation and reaffirmed their readiness to respond to any North Korean threat or provocation.
Right after the launch, the Joint Chiefs of Staff Chairman Kim Song-kyum and the U.S. Forces Korea Commander Paul LaCamera held a meeting to closely discuss the situation and reaffirmed their joint defense readiness via the planned joint sea drills between South Korea and the United States to respond to any threat or provocation from North Korea.
To Palestine now, another Palestinian man was shot and killed on Saturday night during a Zionist raid in Nablus, occupied West Bank. According to Palestinian sources, the Palestinian martyr was killed by an undercover Zionist army officer. 3 others were also wounded in the raid and were subsequently hurried to hospital for medical treatment. Meanwhile, Zionist settlers stormed the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound in East Jerusalem on Sunday morning amid heavy Zionist security presence. Still in Palestine, 30 Palestinians administrative detainees in the Zionist occupation prisons start an open-ended hunger strike today in protest of their unfair detention without charges. Prisoners decided to go on hunger strike as a protest against the policy of administrative detention in which the prisoners are held in prison for renewable periods without any trial. In Iran, the protests that followed the death of the 22-year-old Masha Amini, who was detained in Tehran and died last week, are considered the largest in the Islamic Republic since 2019. Sofian Kantouri.
After being arrested in Tehran, Masha Amini, who's aged 22-year-old, passed away last week. The authorities have said they would launch an investigation into the cause of her death. but the protests that followed this tragedy are defined as the biggest demonstrations in the Islamic Republic since 2019. Prisoner Raisi claimed after meeting with the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres that Iran has freedom of expression, but the protests happening now are unacceptable acts of chaos. Meanwhile, the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres pleaded with the Iranian security forces not to retaliate with unnecessary or unequal force against demonstrators.
We call on security forces to refrain from using unnecessary and disproportionate force and appeal to all to exercise restraint to avoid further escalation. And I would add, we call on the authorities to respect the rights and freedom of expression, peaceful assembly and association.
The world witnessed big protests this week. In Latin America, feminist organizations in Chile on Friday protested, speaking out against the lack of women's rights.
From Chile, we're very far from Iran, but in this international struggle, we have learned to recognize ourselves as friends, sisters and comrades with all the women who are rising up in the world.
Hundreds in the United States, Germany, Canada and Greece gathered the streets, embassies of Iran and department of the UN to protest against the Iranian government after this shocking incident.
And now for more international news, let's follow this roundup.
A social media user captured Storm Fiona battering Nova Scotia on Saturday as it ripped into eastern Canada with hurricane-force winds, forcing evacuations, knocking down trees and power lines. As a result, 500,000 homes were left without power across the region as the storm pummeled a wide area, felling countless trees and ripping roofs from buildings.
Typhoon hit central Japan on Saturday with torrential rain and fierce winds, killing 2 and leaving tens of thousands of households without power. A man in his 40s was killed in the landslide, and a 29-year-old man was found dead after his car plunged into a reservoir. Power was also cut to about 120,000 households, and the landslide had knocked over 2 electricity pylons.
Super Typhoon was heading to the Philippines on Sunday, where it approached the densely populated island of Luzon, leading to preventive evacuations in coastal cities. Philippine authorities started evacuating people from coastal areas, and hundreds were unable to travel by sea, as numerous ferry services were suspended and airlines cancelled 30 domestic and international flights.
The Irish capital, Dublin, witnessed last evening a vigil decorated with Palestinian flags ahead of the start of the football match between Ireland and Israel. Over the past hours, Ireland's social media platforms have circulated a number of videos and photos featuring dozens of activists outside the stadium holding Palestinian flags and signs calling for a boycott of the Israeli occupation government.
On Saturday, a flotilla of 150-litre boats made its way down the Thames in the heart of London under the leadership of Gloriana of Queen Elizabeth II as part of the work of art illuminated the river and coordination with the Totally Thames event. The boats have passed under a number of river bridges that were lit up in the colors of the Platinum Jubilee.
It's been a commemoration, really, of Her Majesty's life and a celebration of that, and it's also been a celebration of the river and a fundraising opportunity for the RNLI's new station at Waterloo. So it's been an incredible occasion and fantastic to see so many people out on the river enjoying it.
Elephant's business in Thailand is declining, and the owners are struggling to get enough incomes as a result of the COVID-19 outbreak that halted the tourism in the country.
In the northeastern village in Thailand, a young girl starts her day by doing a live stream videos of her 2 elephants on TikTok and YouTube to raise money to survive. She has been taking care of elephants since she was in school. It is a secure source of income for the family. who used to earn money thanks to elephant shows. This news source could barely provide food for her and the 2 elephants for one day.
We love the elephants like they are a member of the family. We've been living with them for so many years. We've been through thick and thin together.
Like thousands of elephant owners in Thailand, the Sapmak family had to go back to their home village as the COVID-19 outbreak ruined elephant camps and curbed tourism industry in the country.
We're only hoping for tourists to be back. If they come back, we might not be doing these live streams anymore. Some days, we could not sell anything on the live stream. There was no security. If we gotta go back to work, we get a stable income to buy grass for elephants to eat.
Without the elephants, we don't know what our future will look like. We have today, thanks to them.
According to conservationist groups, elephants eat from 200 to 400 kilograms of grass and fruits each day. Thailand has about 4,000 captive elephants, where around 3,500 are in the wild.
At least 1,000 elephants in Thailand will stay without income, without a proper income. So there's a job there for the Ministry of Agriculture and Livestock to, because they are the ones that take care of the animal welfare of captive elephants, of finding some kind of budget to support these elephants. Otherwise, it's going to be difficult to keep them alive, I think, for most families. The main market for tourist camps with elephant riding is people from India, Russia, and China. Now, of course, China is not opening up the borders before the end of this year. If they're going to do that, I mean, that's very unclear and I think almost impossible to predict.
The families in Banteck Klang have a strong connection with the elephants. The place is considered as the epicenter of Thailand's elephant business. However, the current situation required the government support and tourist return to save these giant mammals and their owners.
To this end, ladies and gentlemen, let's have a reminder for our main headlines. The President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, renews his country's firm position with international legitimacy regarding the Libyan, Saharan and Malian crises. President of the United Nations General Assembly hails Algeria's prominent role in the African region, highlighting its exceptional contribution for the settlement of international conflicts. In Italy, about 51 million Italians will cast their votes for lawmakers in both the lower house, the Chamber of Deputies, and the Senate, the upper house of Parliament. "17 bodies were recovered over the past few hours after a boat carrying migrants from Lebanon sank off Syria's coast, raising the overall toll to 94. That's all we have for now. For more updates, you can follow our social media platform as well as the official website of the L24 News. Bye for now.